Good morning, everyone. This is Carol Dimitrov with OPA Community Outreach, and today we're pleased to have Victoria Smoot. Victoria is going to be teaching us about the secrets of Venus and how to unlock its secrets. Venus is much more than the feminine principle, as we learn from other mythologies. It also is more than just the very non-specific keyword of values, and this is very important to understand with your own mind. A little bit about Victoria. She has a Master's of Education. She has her ISAR.CAP and is a member of OPA and NCGR. Victoria serves ISAR as the editor-in-chief of the ISAR Journal, the International Astrologer, and is a trainer of consulting skills for OPA. She is a certified professional and peer group leader. For Victoria, astrology is a rich language to study and research, as well as a system of archetypes and symbols for understanding, to teach, and consult. And you can contact Victoria at vfnsmoot@gmail.com. And you can also visit her on her Facebook page, and all that will be posted in your mailing. So Victoria, it is all yours. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. It's really great to be here on the first new moon day of Taurus, ruled by Venus, to talk about Venus and really dig into some of the what I call secrets. I've been researching this topic seriously for about 5 years. And I'm always want to dig deeper into the archetypes and find out what other mythologies lend to our understanding of that principle and expand my keywords for any of the astrological principles, because I feel that the keywords are our wizard bag of gems and words that we use to communicate this wondrous cosmology that we've embraced. So the secret of Venus is part of my continuing study in essentials of consciousness. And I'm one by one and simultaneous as well, studying the different planetary archetypes to find out how much more we can use. So the image that a lot of people love in connection with Venus is as the Greek Aphrodite Venus painting done by Sandro Botticelli in the post-medieval and the beginning of the Renaissance era. And it shows Venus kind of served up on a half shell. Now she's beautiful, and she represents the iconic beauty that we all think of when the people of Europe rediscovered the writings of the Greeks, and they just put these teachings on a pedestal. The classical astrology is built upon the Hellenistic traditions and the stories from Greek mythology and who is Venus. And it's kind of settled on that, and people are very happy with it, and it does work. And I'm not seeking to depart from that. It is a foundation for us, but I'm just trying to expand it and show you different points of view to see how much more we could include in our understanding. From the Greek mythology, we learn that Venus was one of the great Olympian divinities. She was a goddess of love and beauty according to the popular and poetic perceptions of the Greek in Renaissance times. Now, from Hesiod and the Homeric hymn on Aphrodite, we learn that she was a goddess after rising from the foam, first approached the island of Cythera and then went to Cyprus. As she walked on the seacoast, flowers sprang up under her feet. How magical is that? Eros and Himeros accompanied her to the assembly of the other great gods, all of whom were struck with admiration and love when she appeared, and her surpassing beauty made everyone desire to have her for his wife. And reflects our principle of Venus ruling Libra. According to the cosmological views of nature, Aphrodite was the personification of the generative powers of nature and the mother of all living beings. And that reflects Venus ruling the earth sign of Taurus. So all of these, our keywords, our key phrases, they come from the mythology in which we are entrained. Now, the glyph for Venus is a very interesting topic. I'm going to use this throughout. We think of it about liking. When you like somebody, that's the energy of Venus. Evaluating, attraction, joining together. This symbol for Venus is often taken as a hand mirror, which seems appropriate here. The circle can represent the sun or spirit above the cross of matter in the glyph, indicating that spirit or even self is above the material. But here is a connection. Now, this particular slide is going to come back later in the program when we've gone through some different perspectives. Differing from the symbol for Mercury, she lacks a crescent. And this is commonly thought of as, the crescent represents thought and indicates that Venus uses taste and feelings to evaluate and, kind of lacks the thought. Well, there's another way of looking at it that I'm going to get into shortly. The mirror and the symbol for the Ankh, very much like the glyph for Venus from Egypt. The Ankh is the Egyptian symbol for life, the handled cross or Cook's Ansata. It represents both the male triad and the female unit. The Cook's Ansata represents the truth that a fruitful union of male and female is a gift from deity and represents together the emblem of life. So, suggesting here that Venus stands for both the male and the female principle, but in unity and joining together. Venus as mirror, and Venus rules mirrors actually. You probably look at a mirror every day, but mirrors can reveal the way the brain puts together information from different sensory channels, such as vision and somatic sensations like touch, muscle, and joint sense. In so doing, they can reveal a lot about our sense of self. This comes from an article called Reflections of the Mind by Ramachandran from Scientific American. And the mind is a mirror. There are mirror cells in the brain, and it is how blind people see the actions of others. The discovery of mirror neurons in the brains of macaques about 10 years ago shocked the neuroscience community. Mirror neurons are cells that fire both when the macaque, performs a certain task and when it observes another individual performing that same task. Identifying networks or similarly behaving cells in humans gives rise to much speculation over the role of such neurons might play in phenomena such as imitation, language acquisition, observational learning, empathy, and the theory of the mind. This comes from another Scientific American article by Mary Bates. Now, Venus and Mercury. In this program, I'm going to be using Venus in relation to Mercury and not Mars to show how I built up my argument here. In the Jewish Kabbalah, Venus is a seventh sphere. Victory, or Netzach, forms part of the lowest triad of the spheres, together with Hud, Mercury, and Yesod, the moon. Dion Fortune called this the astral triad, the domain of magic, where the power of Netzach is shaped by Hud and manifested in Yesod. This could also be called the personal triad, or the balance between Venus and Mercury, artist and scientist, has to be achieved in the individual. Well, what defines our personal sphere astrologically? Then the closest orbs, the moon, Venus, and Mercury. And they form this relationship, and each of its apparent orbits around our Earth involve our distance from the Earth to the sun. So it is the inner self, it is the inner being. Now, on a civilization timeline I created here, I wanted to show that the Greek influence is relatively short when you consider the time between 3600 BCE and 1200 AD. And on the left, we have the civilizations identified, and on across the other side, the astrologies from those civilizations. So you have Mesopotamia, which is quite long, the green line. You have Egypt, which is older, is parallel to, and goes right up to being parallel to the Greek civilization, but starts much earlier. The China civilization extends quite a long ways, as well as the India, and then the Mayan is dated later. I'm not sure that's really accurate sometimes, though. I think some of those things in Mexico go far, far back. And then finally, we have the medieval astrologies from Europe, starting in 400 AD and moving forward. So between the Greek, when the Greeks were active, and when the European civilizations brought them into study and source material for their astrology, there is a gap. But this is some of the civilizations I'm going to mention here. And what did they think of this Venus energy, or are there equivalents? In Egypt, we have the Ankh, which we already talked about a bit. And in this beautiful relief carving from a temple at Abydos, a highly detailed relief of the goddess Isis offering life to Seti I. This was his temple at Abydos. And you see that the Ankh is right there. It's life-giving. It's like the breath into the being of Seti I from Isis, the goddess Isis. Now, in Egypt, she is considered the ascended sky mother. Her star, Sirius, follows the constellation of Orion, who is equated to Osiris, her husband. And these are two of the most vividly apparent, and we refer to them all the time. We find them in the sky. Orion the hunter, followed by that bright, bright star of Sirius, is Osiris, the ascended Osiris, and his Isis. And she really was the mother of all. She was really the magic goddess who, when Osiris was hunted down and killed and his body separated, she brought those parts together in the story and breathed life back into them. And from that miracle conceived Horus. Hathor is the consort or wife of Horus, and she is the goddess of women and birth and childbirth, and also of things like parties and music and all those things that lead up to the love experience and the fertility and the birth experience. She is the Egyptian equivalent of Ishtar. Is Hathor, a goddess of love and fertility, often represented as a cow. Like most important Egyptian gods and goddesses, she had a solar connection. Hathor was the patron of women and their lives, and also everything which brings joy: love, art, music, and beer, drink. Sekhmet. Now here, consider this, if this is part of the energy that we need to consider. Sekhmet, the lioness, goddess of war and healing. She was the daughter of Ra and the wife of Ptah. Ptah was a creator god who created man as a potter would create a piece of pottery on the potter's wheel. There is a dark side to Sekhmet. Now, this statue on the left side of your picture is a this statue stands almost 7 feet tall in the small temple of Ptah at Karnak. And you go into the temple and you look into the face of Sekhmet. It is said, if you have a guilty conscience, you will see the fierceness in her face. And if you have clear conscience, you will see her smiling at you. And it's lighted from above. It's very dramatic. The darker side of her story, however, is an unquenchable bloodlust for revenge. Ra sent Sekhmet out to avenge his enemies one day. And as she went, killing them, she could not be stopped until almost all of humanity had been killed and blood was everywhere. This is, unbridled rage. Ra had to make a beer that was red colored, and she started to drink it. And eventually she became drunk and returned to Ra, finally subdued and at peace. And he learned a lesson not to try that again. So, but she is also stands for healing, the healing. In order for healing to happen, the enemy within the body or from it has to be ravaged or eliminated in some way. And she carries that power. One of the highest principles of ancient Egypt is represented in Ma'at. Now, interestingly, she is the wife of Thoth. And Thoth, I believe, is greatly equivalent to Mercury. She's a goddess of divine justice, and she wears an ostrich feather on her head that is used at the scales, the weighing of the heart at the final judgment of the soul. And for all throughout Egyptian cosmology, she represents truth and harmony. In ancient Egypt, goddess Ma'at personified the abstract quality of truth and order, as well as the divine principle of balance in the universe. She's almost like the highest judgment of all, is Ma'at. Again, a goddess. Now we move on to Mesopotamia. Samaria and Egypt are really seamless, but Sumerian architecture is throughout Egypt. Inanna is the Sumerian Lady of Heaven, like Hathor and Sekhmet combined. In Babylonia, she was known as Ishtar. And Ishtar journeyed to the underworld to meet her sister, who was the goddess of the underworld. And there was plotting and death and resurrection in her story that echoes some of the narratives that we get from the Christian story of Jesus after his crucifixion. So the name Ishtar has often been linked to the word Easter, perhaps in that way. Also, Namu, the goddess of celestial waters and the cosmos itself. Another sister is Ninharsug, the great mother of the earth, plants, animals, and lower gods. So throughout Mesopotamia, you had many of the feminine principle goddesses at work, and they, I think, are just as important as Venus. In India, in the Vedic astrology, Venus is called Shukra in Hindu mythology and is a male. Shukra is the son of the great seer Shrigu, an astrologer who taught his son all the sciences and scriptures. Shukra was in the relationship to other planetary gods, the enemy of Brahaspati, who is Jupiter. Shukra in Sanskrit means semen. So it's a male principle here. In Mesoamerica, the Mayans and the Aztec views of the planet Venus, the Mayans had their Kukulkan, considered Venus to be a male warrior figure and the sun's twin and a war god. And the Aztecs saw Venus as the shaman Quetzalcoatl, the plumed serpent, called a dying king that had a trail of smoke and who would return. He was used to plan for times of raids and battles. So there's really a warrior energy in this. In Chinese astrology, they associate the same celestial body with a different energy altogether. The planet known as Venus is instead called the Great White Metal Planet. The color white is associated with death. The metal planet is associated with the western direction. Its energies were not associated at all with war, with love, but rather with war and military affairs. So there's quite a bit of a contrast in this. The Greeks and the Egyptians at first thought that Venus was actually two separate objects, a morning star and an evening star. Greeks called the morning star Phosphoros, the bringer of light, and they called the evening star Hesperos, the star of the evening. In a few hundred years, Hellenistic Greeks realized Venus was actually a single object. The Christians in the Middle Ages, now this I think is where a split occurred. In the Middle Ages, used Venus to identify the devil. They identified the morning star with evil and used this, I believe, in the demonization of women based on Eve in Genesis. And so there's always cross-culture pollination going on in what we end up having to inherit from all these civilizations as they layer in. In the Christian narratives, we have the person of, we talked about Eve, the first female human. And her, a lot of qualities are ascribed to her, you know, the deception of tempting Adam to eat the apple. And their idea, again, their idea of the knowledge of good and evil. You have that word knowledge that is more really about mind than emotion. You have Mary, the mother of Jesus, the iconic mother of Jesus, a virgin. So to have conceived Jesus purely. And then I think this one is most interesting is Mary Magdalene, who at least we know was a friend and a follower, possibly the wife of Jesus, but she was also considered the intellectual equal to his disciples, as depicted in the Easter story when she was with the disciples looking to find Jesus in his tomb on the early morning. There were the women who came, but Magdalene is with the male disciples. So she was in association with them. Now, the qualities of the evening and the morning star are wonderfully written about by great astrologers, among which Dane Rudhyar told us that the people born with Venus as a morning star, in other words, in your chart, wherever your sun is, the Venus rises before it. And the morning star's name is Lucifer, before the sun in the zodiac, are socially impulsive. They rush into life and love, acting before thinking. And the people with the Venus as an evening star, in other words, it would be as the sun is setting, then you see Venus following the sun as an evening star, called Hesperos, after the sun in the zodiac, these people tend to reflect before acting, and they are more able to identify with society's rules. This is what Rudhyar said. The dance of the Venus and Earth orbits is beautiful and creates a pentagon ratio choreography. 8 years of Earth time equals 13 years of Venus time, and the ratio between those is 1.1618, or pi. When the Sun, Earth, and Venus form a straight line so that it can, from the Earth, Venus and the Sun can be seen rising together. After 5 of these conjunctions occur there, a pentagram is formed in the sky. It is the perfect symbol for the manifestation of solar light manifested in the earthly flesh of man, and forms 5 of these form a star. When I started studying Venus pentagram of orbits was, as you see, 5 years ago, and I put in the dates to where these conjunctions occur. The work of Ariel Gutman and a lecture by Ann Ortley talks about finding your prenatal Venus point. That's this point that occurred, one of these points occurred before you were born. It's not unlike finding your prenatal eclipse point, to find out which solar eclipse preceded your birth, and lending to a great deal of interpretation on where you're coming from. So this Venus point has things to teach us as well. Each of these points has 72 degrees between them, apart from the next one or from the last one. And this 73 degrees forms a quintile. That is a 5th harmonic aspect. And it's said to denote genius or talent, but a particular kind of creativity. We think of creativity as painting and writing maybe, and the arts, but this creativity is special, as I think explains here. The quintile and the biquintile, which is double the 72 to 144, are considered minor aspects. These aspects are arrived at by dividing the circle into 5, and the best understood by looking to symbology behind the number 5. They point to talent, a desire to create order and to categorize, fascination with patterns and structures, perfectionistic tendencies, and the desire to build or make things. These aspects in the 5th harmonic have the characteristics of both the trine and the opposition. They point to an awareness of conflicts and a talent and the problem, and a talent for finding solutions for them. So the people who are so creative at problem solving look to their quintiles and their biquintiles for verification. When I first started studying this was because I noticed in the charts of famous prominent scientists, Venus was dominant. Now, it may be the Venus quality of being, attractive or social enough to have made one's name in the public. But nevertheless, Nikola Tesla, his writings and his work are really very Venusian. He did not marry in his life. He was in love with science. Though free to think and act, we are held together, he said, like stars in the firmament, with ties inseparable. These ties cannot be seen, but we can feel them. I think he was very conscious and sensitive to vibrations and harmonics of everything that he set his mind to. This is his chart by most, now there is a, depends on which calendar you use, but most people recognize this Taurus rising chart as a chart for Tesla. In the 4th house cusp, you have Venus conjuncting the Sun, and that also gives strength to the Venus. But the chart's ruler, never ignore the chart's ruler. I would put it right up there with the strength of the Moon and the Sun in determining what kind of person you're dealing with when you look at a chart. In a 1926 interview for Collier's magazine, Nikola Tesla said, Through countless generations from the very beginning, the social subservience of women resulted naturally in the partial atrophy, or at least the hereditary suspension, of mental qualities which we know the female sex to be endowed with no less than men. He said that in 1926. But the female mind has demonstrated a capacity for all the mental qualities, acquirements, and achievements of men. The dormant faculties of her brain will be stimulated to an activity that will be all the more intense and powerful because of centuries of repose. Women will ignore precedent and startle civilization with their progress. Take that out of there. Okay, get back on track here. Michio Kaku, you've ever seen him on TV? He's an American futurist, theoretical physicist, and popularizer of science. He's a professor of theoretical physics at City College in New York. Michio Kaku, born in 1947, he's a Libra rising, Neptune right on the ascendant. His sun is in the 4th house with Mars and Mercury. His Venus is in Sagittarius. So there's the futurist in him. Sagittarius is a sign of the archer who shoots the arrow into the distance, runs to find it, picks it up, and shoots it again. There he is. And what did he say? The Venus mind of Michio. I'm going to call it his Venus mind because I believe Venus is mind. The mind that math is the mind of God, he says. Dr. Kaku says we might imagine God as we know him to be a mathematician. The mind of God, we believe, is cosmic music, the music of strings resonating through 11-dimensional hypersphere. That is the mind of God. This is how Michio Kaku thinks as a scientist. Neil deGrasse Tyson. Now, he thinks astrology is bunk, but wait till you hear the quote that he gave. He does not have a time chart, but he has a Venusian way of thinking. He has the Venus very near the Sun and Mercury. There's a really tight conjunction there. He's an astrophysicist, cosmologist, author, and scientific communicator. Since 1996, he's director of the Hayden Planetarium at the Rose Center for Earth and Space in New York. I think being a scientist in New York is also an advantage to getting on the media, like Michio Kaku and Neil deGrasse Tyson. But here's what Neil said. We are part of this universe. We are in this universe. But perhaps more important than both of these facts is that the universe is in us. And he does not ascribe to astrology. Now, from there, I was privileged to do research with a friend who studied biology and the brain. And science is coming out more and more with these discoveries about the anatomy of the brain. The major non-neuronic cell type found in the brain are called glia cells. They function to support and help maintain the signaling abilities of the neurons. They do not participate directly in electrical signals. Neurons send and transmit impulses throughout the brain. And this I give to the activity represented by Mercury, sending signals, sending thoughts. Glia cells surround and nourish each neuron. They also support the growth of these neurons toward the outer cortex, building in meditation the rainbow bridge of higher consciousness. And this can be, and you can see this in the brain. That I equivalent to Venus. Not only that, these glia cells also accompany every other cell in the body, thus comprising a glia body brain that is throughout the whole body. In the human body, there are between 10 and 50 glia for every neuron, and at least one glia for every other cell in the body. The glia network is 10 times larger than the neural network and actually controls all the functions of neurons throughout the body. This was written by my friend Gandalf Slick, independent researcher, and he studied biology and brain theory in college and throughout his life. He points out that glia cells function as a managerial units for neurons. They have the capacity of becoming neurons if necessary. They are seamlessly connected throughout the body, communicating with one another through vibration. When they did an autopsy on the brain of Albert Einstein, they found that he had 70% more glia cells in his brain than the average human brain. And when you read about his life and his writings and his thoughts, it's almost as though he spent most of his time in meditation. He was building a massive cortex. So for planetary signatures of brain cells, when I think of neurons now, I think of Mercury sending their signals, communicating the glia to Venus, nourishing and being the support structure for those neurons. Now, in esoteric astrology I studied for several years, we have a thing called the 7 rays, and each ray has a planet or a planetary pair ruling them. The 7 rays represent 7 archetypes of energy, expression of life on this planet from the 7 stars of the Big Dipper, known as the Great Bear. Each ray is ruled in our solar system by 1 or 2 planets, and they influence the personality on that ray. So when we look at these 7 rays, what do they represent? We have first ray, will or power and willpower. Second, love and wisdom. Third, active intelligence. Fourth, harmony through conflict. Fifth, concrete knowledge or science ruled by Venus. First ray is Vulcan or Pluto. Second is Sun and Jupiter. Third is Saturn and Earth. Fourth, Mercury, Moon, but Venus holds the 5th ray, according to the writings of Alice Bailey. The 5th ray, the ray of concrete knowledge, concept being the vehicle of expression for the ideas in the mind of God, the urge to reveal law through intellect, the power to express divinity through deep penetration into matter. On a soul level, those who work to be connecting links of intelligence between the abstract world of pure ideation and the concrete world of practical application. Just fix something here. Those who work are connecting links of intelligence between the abstract world of pure ideation and the concrete world of practical application. So you have precision and exactitude matter a great deal to these souls in creating these forms and invention which allow for the outpouring of higher mind intelligence. So here we have a principle of Venus maybe as practical consciousness. What is applicable to this earth plane? What are the ideals and the concepts that work on earth? Knowledge seeking are keywords, methodical, and analytical truth, tangibly manifested, formal, mentally detached, traditional in thought, researching, logic is God, scientific impulse, observant, reverence for laws of nature, disseminator of knowledge, mathematics, total belief in matter, common sense, fact-loving, patient, striving for accuracy, predominantly mental, preserving, fruitful, in pursuit of discovery, understanding will liberate you. Special method of mental usefulness. On a personality level, Ray 5 is the ray of the scientist, the technician, the lawyer, the engineer, the researcher, the computer expert, and the logician. What happened to love? Well, maybe there is a level of love right there, the greater principle of love. Now, planetary strength is interestingly shown if you look up a chart on AstroTheme. If you scroll down on any chart you look up, you will see relative strength of planets. Now, here's a chart where Venus is 15% out of 100, almost 16%, and the other planets follow, with Mercury being least powerful. This is a Libra chart. Venus is down in Aquarius. Where's the lowest? Mercury's in Sag over here. It has to do with where they're located, what they rule, their position in angular houses. All that is considered in ranking the percentage of strength. Now, this is like a, whose iconic chart is this? Someone born January 4th, 1643 in Woolsthorpe, England at 1:38 a.m. English physicist, mathematician, who widely recognized as one of the most influential scientists of all time. His work has been said to distinctly advance every branch of mathematics then studied. The key figure in the scientific revolution is the father of modern science, known for calculus, laws of planetary motion, gravity, scientific method, and the secret study of philosophy and alchemy related to higher power. What is up here? It's Isaac Newton. There's been some shade thrown on Isaac Newton lately about some of the shenanigans he was into, but he did study metaphysics, and he did have all those accomplishments. He said, "I do not know what I may appear to the world, but to myself I seem to have been only like a boy playing on the seashore and diverting myself now and then in finding a smoother pebble or prettier shell than ordinary, while the great ocean of truth lay all undiscovered before me." Now, when I read that, the image that comes to my mind is Venus on the shore, coming on a shell into the world. And so somewhere in the mind of Isaac Newton is a very strong Venus. Venus and Mercury. Now we're upgrading the traditional astrology here to consider. Now, how does our Mercury principle of thought, related to Thoth from Egypt, compare to Venus principle of concrete mind and scientific inquiry? Well, consider that Mercury is a thought process, messaging, and decision-making. Mercury, the most common keyword used for Mercury is communication. Venus is appreciation, ethics, and the mindset that attracts to itself what it is. Think of it as the mind source, the source mind of all connections, the source mind of all communications. Mercury carries God's messages, how you hear and use and express them. Venus then could represent the mind of God, how you sense, represent, and use it toward your search for harmony and balance. Okay, a book that I studied while I was taking my master's degree really woke me up. It's called The Alphabet versus the Goddess, The Conflict Between Word and Image by Leonard Shlain. Shlain proposes that the rise of alphabetic literacy the process of reading and writing fundamentally reconfigured the human brain and brought about profound changes in history, religion, and gender relations. It conditioned the way we think. He shows why agricultural pre-literate cultures were principally informed by holistic right-brain modes that venerate the goddess and the feminine values and images. Writing, particularly alphabets, drove cultures toward linear thinking, and with it came the decline of the feminine and the rise of the patriarchy and misogyny, causing imbalance between the sexes. That's a lot to take in, I realize, and I'll try to give you the highlights. This is the book called The Alphabet versus the Goddess. Is this here the secret of Venus, and how are we dealing with it? He claimed that literacy had a damaging effect in the cultures of the Israelites, Greeks, Christians, and Muslims, show that with the effects of literacy in the Dark Ages, Gutenberg's printing press of 1440, and the need for the Reformation, and it gave rise to witch hunts. There is one fact that can be established, he says, the only phenomenon which, always and in all parts of the world, seems to be linked with the appearance of writing, is the establishment of hierarchical societies consisting of masters and slaves, and where one part of the population is made to work for another part. Now, you can imagine that brought up a lot of controversial reaction, and to look at it on the civilization timeline, this is where the printing press and literacy came to bear. It's after this whole timeline, which ends in 1200, because it's around 1500 that literacy really started to become common among the people based on the availability of printed material. Now, let's go back again to look at, you can ponder that, and meanwhile, we look again at the glyphs for Venus and Mercury. Instead of the symbols for Mercury and Venus being about lacking a crescent, or lacking a head, or lacking intelligence, Venus, the glyph, shows that the mind, here, the mind, is really the source of thought. So it's approaching these comparison from a standpoint of nothing is lacking, but maybe one emanates from the other and finds its expression in Mercury, but Venus is far from mindless. Far from it. So what can be done about this imbalance as Leonard Shlain proposes? Well, according to Leonard Shlain, a renewal of the Venus mind, balance and harmony, is happening. The proliferation of images in art, film, TV, graphics, computers is once again reconfiguring the brain by encouraging holistic right hemisphere modes of mind and bringing about the re-emergence of the feminine within all, not just as the female sex, the feminine aspect of all people. The goddess as a mind attracts everything needed for life by its consciousness, its mindset, its values, and its ethics. Values to me is an inadequate keyword, and I prefer ethics, or at least aesthetics. In our continent, the North American continent, if you take the Native American, oftentimes indigenous people of all cultures have been terribly treated, even to genocide in almost every culture of the world. On our continent, they are example of this pre-literacy agrarian culture. And from them, we get the goddess mind. The goddess mind. And I'll show you, I discovered this and it fits so well. I want you to take time to consider this. Signs of rulership and exaltation for Venus are revealed in these sources, quotes from the American Native American. When you think of Venus and Taurus and its rulership, the ancient Indian proverb says, "Treat the earth well. It is not given to you by your parents. It was loaned to you by your children. We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children." About the earth. Venus in Libra is reflected in this. Aho, mitakui oyasin. All my relations, I honor you in the circle of life within me today. I am grateful for this opportunity to acknowledge you in this prayer. The ideals of Libra, from the Lakota Sioux. Venus in Pisces, the sign of its exaltation. The Great Spirit is in all things, from the Wabanaki Algonquin tradition. Now, I discovered the Native American Code of Ethics, and there are 20 of these. I want to go through them. How much time do we have left here to do that? Well, we have about 8 minutes. It'll work. And you'll get the slides of this talk from the link. Is that right, Carol?
Yes, what they will actually do is they will get the link later on today, so they'll be able to revisit the whole presentation.
Because I don't want to cut off the question and answer time. I just want to show you here. The first one says, "Rise to the sun to pray. Pray alone. Pray often. The Great Spirit will listen if you only speak." And I attribute this to Venus in Aries. Of these 20 ethics in the code, there's one, I feel that there's one kind of resonates with each sign, each element, and each modality. So as you're reading, I'm going to do another version of this slide and show you. Be tolerant of those who are lost on their path. Ignorance, conceit, anger, and jealousy and greed stem from the lost soul. Pray that they will find guidance. Venus in Scorpio. Search for yourself by yourself. Do not allow others to make your path for you. It is your road and yours alone. Others may walk it with you, but no one can walk it for you. Venus in Aquarius. Treat the guests in your home with much consideration. Serve them the best food, give them the best bed, and treat them with respect and honor. Venus in Cancer. Do you see this ethic of this Venus ethic speaking through these words, and the words within them kind of resonate like the key words of Venus? So we're not departing from the way we've thought of Venus, but we see how much broader and deeper it is. Here's some more. I'll go to the second one so you can see the connections. Do not take what is yours, whether from a person, a community, the wilderness, or from a culture. It is not earned or given. It is not yours. Venus in Capricorn. Respect all things that are placed upon this earth, whether it be people or plant. Venus in Taurus. Does this make connections for people? I think, to me, this was like a huge discovery on this path of research, which is not done for me. I keep going on with this. My favorite punctuation is the comma in research. I don't put a period. I wait for the next thing to develop because it's ongoing. Honor people's thoughts. Venus in Gemini. Never speak of others in a bad way. Venus in Libra. Whatever you put out into the universe will multiply when it returns to you. Put those in. All people make mistakes, and all mistakes can be forgiven. Venus in Pisces. Bad thoughts cause illness of the mind, body, and spirit. Practice optimism. Venus in Virgo. Nature is not for us, it is part of us. They are part of your whole worldly family. Venus in Sagittarius. Children are the seeds of our future. Plant love in their hearts and water them with wisdom. and life's lesson. When they are grown, give them space to grow. Venus in Leo. And then these get to the water, the elements. The elements. Avoid hurting the hearts of others. The poison of your pain will return to you. Water signs. Be truthful at all times. Honesty is a test of one's will within the universe. Fire. Keep yourself balanced, your mental life, self, your spiritual self, emotional and physical. Venus in the earth signs, I say. And make conscious decisions as to who you will be and how you will react. Be responsible for your own actions. Venus in air. This is what I came up with, and I encourage others to make their own kind of connections. Maybe another one, there's better fits for you. But think in terms of ethics, a code of ethics, your mindset. This one goes into the modalities. Fixed signs, cardinal signs, mutable signs. Respect the privacy and the personal space of others. Do not touch the personal property of others, especially sacred and religious objects. This is forbidden. I feel that's Venus in fixed signs. Be true to yourself first. You cannot nurture and help others if you cannot nurture and help yourself first. Cardinal sign. Respect others' religious beliefs. Do not force your belief on others. Venus in mutable signs. And share your good fortune with others. Venus in all signs. So the ethic of conscious mind is beauty. So they have a blessing, and it goes like this. May there be beauty above me. May there be beauty below me. Or may there be beauty within me. May there be beauty around me. May I always walk in beauty, and may you also walk in beauty for the rest of your lives. This, I feel, is the Venus mind. May the Great Spirit hold your hand in the palm of his hand. Okay?
That was absolutely beautiful, Victoria.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are getting lots of comments coming in to thank you for these lovely, the prayer and also the code of ethics. Everyone really seemed to enjoy that. And I'm so glad that they'll be happy to get this recording after the presentation and have those to review. I think they would also be great to share when you're working with clients too, and you're seeing those Venus aspects in their charts.
Yeah, because we're always striving for the better expression of any of the energies in our chart, are we not? And
Yes.
These are really ethical ideals that so many nations in our great continent, early nations, lived by and taught to their young.
Yes, and I think it's so important that we were, you did a wonderful job in bringing forward all the history and the archetypes and the mythology. And I think sometimes we tend to forget that in our everyday chart consultations. So I think it's so important to reiterate that, because when we bring through so much of those stories into the charts, it really brings them alive.
Mm-hmm. And do not, consider Venus in a man's chart. Oh my God, Venus is a universal concept. It is not male or female. The feminine and the masculine, as Carl Jung pointed out, are in everyone. And the balance and harmony between these aspects in ourselves is so important to our stability of mind, actually. It is what can absolutely drive us crazy if the harmony is not there.
Yes, yes. And I'm seeing again lots of thank yous. Does anyone have any specific questions? I've got one from Sarah, and she's saying, beautiful presentation of Venusian energy. Can you say something about Lilith?
Now, Lilith, that is interesting. It's almost as though in our Western astrology, we crave for these additional feminine goddesses that the other cultures seem so rich in. And Lilith, I think, actually helps to bring a balance to the really base survival instinctiveness that is in us all, really, the struggle and the power, fierceness to survive. When I think of Lilith, It's not, bring her out of the shadow. And also, Eris and the work of those trans-Plutonian orbs. We're coming in with more feminine representations in our pantheon, so to speak. I'm not an expert in Lilith. I know there are astrologers who are, and I'm thinking of Antonia from Germany, who has given talks. I know she gave talk for ISAR, but she is kind of an authority from her research on Lilith.
Very good, thank you. And then from Darlene, she wrote, love all the American Indian slides. I think I understand Venus so much better. I am a scientist, researcher with a strong Venus. So thank you for chiming in on that, Darlene.
Thank you for that verification. I love it. I studied female scientists' charts too. I'm still studying these. Often they might not have a strong Venus, but if they don't, they have a strong sun. A stronger sun or Saturn. Isn't that interesting? But the male scientists, so many with Venus that are strong in their charts.
And Faye writes, excellent work. So appreciate this connection with Venus and Mercury. And then from Karina, she writes, I am a Libra with Mercury conjunct Venus.
Wow.
So I also see the world through my Venus glasses. Totally relate to this.
Oh, wonderful.
Oh, Richard wrote Antonia Langsdorff.
That's right.
Yes.
Antonia Langsdorff. She is our global director at ISAR for Germany. And her work on Lilith is very, very good. Very thorough.
I remember seeing her lecture at one of the conferences many years ago. And yes, she's a fantastic presenter as well.
I remember she said her daughter has really strong Lilith and goes barefoot all the time. So, I like to see the image or the story or the narrative that goes with it.
Yes, yes. And Dee writes, beautiful. Thank you for your lecture. I really have enjoyed it. Blessings. Faye writes, love this presentation. More of technical questions, please. You had shown a slide showing the strength of each planet. How can I find this in a chart?
Well, you look at look at your Venus, and look at each one, particularly if it's the ruler of the chart, or if it rules an angle. What houses does it rule? How do you see that this is really a mindset? And it's in a relationship with the concept of beauty itself. What is beautiful to you? What gives you harmony? What gives you peace? Or do you have a challenge with that? What aspects does the Venus make? How strong is it in comparison to the Mercury? Are you the one speaking the thoughts, or are you the one that is cooking them up inside your mind, And it's a mindset. And Taurus, especially in esoteric astrology, rules the higher spiritual senses of clairvoyance, clairsentient, all these levels of refinement of the senses itself. How do you relate to the senses? How do you relate to your Libra? Where is Libra in your chart? Does it really operate like a constant checking the balance of giving and taking, and gauging the energy of others whenever you're in relationship with them? Libras are strong in that. In Pisces, does your compassion lead you down dark alleys, adopting stray dogs?
I can relate to that.
Rescue, you know what I'm saying? Oh, yeah. It's like, it's so lovely. Like Venus on a half shell, Botticelli, she's so lovely. But have you any idea the power that's there?
Yes. Richard made a comment, and I believe this is about the charts, and he said they are called Cosmodynes by Doris Chase Donne. That's
Oh,
the last name is Donne,
yeah,
and it's planetary strength. So I think that's where the chart information is
great.
available.
Great reference. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Richard.
Yeah.
And then Angela writes, I too am an MS in science with strong Venus. I am deep in research and I'm an artist too. And if you've ever seen any of Angela's work, Angela Blissbridge, she's an amazing artist. So I'm going to give her kudos for that.
Yeah.
And let's see, I lost her spot. Oh, she is a Libra moon in fourth ruling Cancer rising.
Perfect.
And
A lot of mathematicians are also musicians.
yes, I've heard that. Yes.
And vice versa. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there
And
again.
Corina writes, would Victoria be able to answer this question? Let's see, Corina. My Venus is in Scorpio and currently transiting Uranus, is in partile. Oh, that's a big question.
It is. I
Yes.
really would
Maybe you
not.
can email it to her,
Yeah, I really
Corina.
can't. I really hesitate to answer specific position questions.
Yeah, that's a big
Questions
question.
without
Well,
having seen the birth chart.
yes, yes.
And that's, just for, you have everything is in context of that original geometric stargate that you came in on. Everything comes through that energy of that crystal. You have to look at that crystal first.
Yes.
But great respect for your question. Uranus dealing with a Venus in Scorpio, it means there's something to change. There's something is changing drastically and very deeply.
Very good, very good. And Faye is thanking Richard. That was exactly what she was looking for. So
Yeah.
we got the information
Yeah.
available.
And also astro theme. Sometimes they're not accurate on their charts, but they do in their explanations have bar graphs that show the relative strength of planets.
Oh, good to know. Very good.
Astrotheme.com.
Okay, very good. And I don't see any new questions popping up, but everyone is just saying that there's just really have enjoyed this presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent work. I love the presentation. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. So thank you very much, Victoria.
Thank you, Carol.
It was a joy having you on today, and we really appreciate all the research you've done for us and all this work. And I know that everybody will really enjoy being able to replay this video over and over again to get the information. And again, remember, keep these links in some type of an email or on a file so that you can review these presentations anytime you choose.
Right. Make a file for them on your desktop, and then you can go back to them whenever you want to, when you wake up in the middle of the night. Perfect time.
Yes, yes. Very good. And again, thank you all for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks with Kay Taylor. Have a great day, everyone. I'm sorry, Victoria?
You don't want to miss Kay Taylor. She's wonderful.
Isn't she fantastic? Yes. Mm-hmm. Thank you again. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.